bringing in something which is completely non-existent and changing the whole thing. But then if you ask me, innovation could be, of course this is true, but something beyond that. It could also be building on or bettering an existing process. And as a byproduct, you could be bringing in something new as well. This in itself could be an innovation.
Here at IBS, my role lets me take a very practical approach to innovation. Doing what everyone else does will not let us stand out from the competition. Instead, our revenues depend on the relevance to the customers.
Innovation, according to me, is trying to be more effective at your work, continuously trying to better the best, and also being open to feedback so that we can bring in meaningful, improvements in our work.
Innovation can be as complex as a computer or as simple as a sliced bread. The true worth of innovation should be measured by the degree of ease it brings to our life.
Innovation, I believe, is the introduction of something new or different. It's a process of uncovering a new way to do things. I believe creativity at work leads to innovation.
According to me, innovation is a process of transforming creative ideas into reality, and it is the one thing that makes the world move towards the future.
To me, innovation means accepting the fact that everything in this world is imperfect at somewhere. This gives me the courage to act knowing that even though what we are doing might be imperfect, we are leaving the world a better place.
Ideas drive the world. Through an idea, an impossibility is transformed into a possibility. Innovation takes that possibility and makes it into a reality. For me, innovation is seeing what everyone has seen, yet thinking what no one has thought.
It is indeed true that innovation has transformed all of our lives in profound and meaningful ways. And never is it more apparent to me than when I go back to India, where I grew up. So over the last 20 years, I've been pretty much going back to India, since I moved to the US. I've been going back to India almost every year. And when I go there, I take a lot of gifts for our relatives. I need to go to the airport, to the rail station, and everything. So all these years, it's been a very cumbersome process because my mother lives in the suburbs of Calcutta. And we have to carry all this stuff, and you're dressed up, to look good to the relatives, and you have all these things, and then you say, okay, now we need a car. And we had two options. One option was to call this driver guy, and you call him, and you say, I need to go to such and such place at 10 o'clock tomorrow, so please show up. And then you're waiting, because he might come, he might not come, he might get a full day ride somewhere else, So that's a tension. That's tension planning, option one. Option two, because in India, there is no taxi dispatch. You can't call, or there wasn't. So you walk 1 kilometer to a taxi stand in your, gorgeous, good-looking clothes, and you summon this guy who's standing there, actually, in a big line of cabs, and you get in the cab, and he puts on the meter, and you come back to your house, and you put all the things in the car and set up. So about 5 years ago, I show up again, and my mom says, okay, we have to plan, we have to go and see all these people. And I say, okay, and I take my phone out, and I click, and I say, oh, well, XYZ12, his name is Salim. He's on his way. He's making the turn from the airport road to the main road where, we'd normally catch the cab. So what was the scarce asset there? What were we missing all those years? Of course, it was Uber, and my mom thought, it's like magic. She's, what did you just do? What happened between last year and this year that we don't have to go through this painful exercise? The cars were there. The cars were there either with the driver who was getting an alternate ride or at the taxi stand. There were 10 cars waiting in line. The scarce resource was the access, the communication, and the customer experience that enabled this seamless experience for me. So our thesis is that now the value of an enterprise is sequentially moving from its physical assets, namely the car, to its digital assets. So enterprise value of the future will be defined by how well you grow the value of your digital assets, how well you understand, segment your customer, and how well you deliver a superior customer experience that really meets their needs. Yeah? And how much value is being created? Let's take another example from these decades of disruptive innovations that have shaken our life, to its very foundations. WhatsApp, how much value did it create? It's entirely a digital disruptor, yeah? When they got acquired by Facebook, the valuation of the company was 4 years after they were founded, $19 billion with 55 employees. So that's a value created in that company of $350 million per employee, yeah? So what I'm saying is the digital assets a digital enterprise is worth a lot, and the value of even traditional enterprise is moving sequentially from your physical assets to your digital assets. How many of you have taken any course on Coursera or edX? Yeah, see, it's slowly penetrating, yeah? So we have all these innovations, these digital disruptions that have actually started impacting all areas of our lives. There's education is being impacted, our business world is impacted, how we interact with our customers, our communication strategies are being impacted by digital disruptors, entertainment, Netflix. Is Netflix here? No, okay. Amazon Prime, Fitbit, Apple, yeah. And then in travel, of course, Uber and Airbnb. But what's very interesting is that all these digital-first companies or digital companies of the future are, of course, fantastic innovators. But are they a threat to a traditional company, or how can we innovate? How can traditional companies also innovate as an industry, or create or work in an ecosystem to also, to not be left behind when the Ubers and WhatsApps of the world or the Airbnbs of the world come in and disrupt their space? Because that is happening. That is relentless. And that value is being created fast and shifted fast, right? So my question number one that I'll explore in this talk is, how can a traditional company innovate? And part of the problem is as follows. It's not that traditional companies are, less smart, less intrinsically innovative. Absolutely not. As we know, these are people with incredible skills. They have experience. They have understanding of the industry. So what's the problem? The problem is that a traditional company has what we would call a leadership conundrum. A lot of our, of a traditional companies, which form the bulk of our market and our customer as IBS, customer base, they are really focused on delivering safe, reliable operations. They have to make the product, they have to sell the product. So sales and delivery, that's, you've got to focus on that because that's your economics of your day-to-day operations, yeah? Then there is a small segment of people within that traditional enterprise who's thinking in terms of the immediate future. Sense which way the market is moving, let's respond to it. So the problem is, therefore, less bandwidth is left over for people who are actually in the third or disruptive sector of anticipate and lead. So what's going to completely transform is only getting a fraction of the mind share of the smartest people in traditional companies. So this is a fact. So in my mind, there are many things that are actually helping, that can actually help traditional companies also both respond to and also in some cases go ahead of such digital disruptions. One is either you could take bold risks, yeah? Either organic, that is you invest in R&D, or inorganic, you acquire. You find them quickly, and I'll give more examples in the presentation. Then also, it takes a certain level of, how the startup ecosystem is. A VC will tell you clearly, yeah, I'm willing to make a bet on you, but if it doesn't work out, in 3 years, you're done. It's done. You have clear metrics, and you don't have a lot of wiggle room on that. So we have to build this kind of mentality in the community of traditional companies that partner with us. The second is there is a new collaborative ecosystem that's emerging. So we are, our customers are not alone in this. So both online and offline. So there are many digital assets which are actually empowering a very open, collaborative work environment globally. And also there are, user forums and other community-based drivers of innovation. So I think it's very important that all of us move away from operating kind of in a silo and just embrace this. It's not, it's not as if you put your code out there. If Elon Musk, who's such a fantastic innovator, can go and put he just chucked his patents. He had 150 patents on the wall of the Tesla offices, and one day he wrote a letter to the shareholders saying, I took them all down. Forget the patents. I trust my innovation, and that distracts me. I want the world to have more sustainable future and eco-friendly vehicles. I want everyone to innovate on top of my prototypes. It's fine. I've got my market. I understand where I'm going. I cannot possibly build the potential, the capacity to serve this entire global market that is there for my kind of vehicles. So, of course, Elon Musk is Elon Musk, Even if you don't feel that comfortable about exposing everything or chucking your IP, doesn't matter. Know that option exists, and that others have also put their innovations out there, and we can build upon them. Third is, like these, I call them children now, they're amazing. The hackathons and kind of very disruptive events that bring the young people to the forefront. That's understand it, they're digital native, right? So they understand it in a way that you and I might try to, and we can certainly be very fresh or whatever, but the fact is you have to listen to the youngsters, and typically in a traditional company, they get buried, under layers and layers of hierarchy, and things like hackathons and idea contests and things like that really, pull them out. It's like pulling them out of that day-to-day operation and just saying, wow, look at your creative brain. You're thinking of things. David and I went to David is our colleague. We went to the first possible hackathon, first hackathon with IATA NDC last year in May. And we asked this team of 20-something-year-olds, what ideas did you think of? And they gave us 3 ideas, and we were like, all of this we've never heard of. And we actually won the hackathon, though winning a hackathon is never, ever the point. But it was such a simple and such a beautiful idea, where they used a Google API for Google Vision. So you can take any photograph on the internet, and just click and say, wish I was there. So this guy was saying, it's so hot where I live in Trivandrum, India. In the summer, I want to go to some cold place, and I see a picture. It could be the Alps, it could be the Himalayas, it could be, somewhere in America, in the Rockies. I just want to know how much it would cost me if I wanted to go there. So he just says, wish I was there, and boom, it picks up all these APIs for hotel, for car, for airline, and for the image recognition, and just gives him a package to go there. It says, oh yeah, well, actually it's on the border of Italy and Switzerland. It's the skiing area, and you can get there if you have, 600 euro. So that's a fact, So I thought it was brilliant, and we would never have thought of something like that. So promoting this, these kids, they, again, I shouldn't say kids because they're, amazing creative thinkers, but that's how it is. And then also there are other mechanisms where it's a culture issue partly. So you create innovation labs, you have awards, you have how do you integrate innovative processes. So in terms of bold risk-taking, we have myriad examples, and I've sort of talked through all of this in the summary slide, but just to give examples, Expedia and Priceline, which now collectively control 2/3 of the world's online travel distribution globally, and 90+% in the US, they went there through acquisitions. The moment meta search came about, boom, they picked it up. The moment hotel merchant inventory became a big deal, boom, they picked it up. So their route to innovation or grabbing innovative companies has been inorganic, primarily. Apple, on the other hand, is the opposite. Steve Jobs is known for having been so obsessive about, iterating on every element of design. He'd wake up Larry Ellison in the middle of the night and say, there's this new retail concept. It's the Apple Store. Come with me. And they'd take him to a warehouse, and, they'd be like, in the night saying, no, what do you like about this? What do you like about that? There's going to be, and it's just beautiful. Qualcomm, I went to a friend of mine, and his office in Qualcomm, again, he's one of those non-Elon Musk. He's actually got this whole wall of patents sitting there. And they were so good in terms of moving in the telecom world to chips for the smartphones faster than Intel did. And Intel used to be a behemoth. And Qualcomm innovation was a key enabler of their leapfrogging in the mobile world in terms of the processing power they provide. Amazon Travel, this is an example of the second point, which is readiness to abandon unproductive ideas. Another friend of mine, she was in Amazon Travel. For years, they were sending out these packages and things. And one day, we had lunch together on Friday, and she said, don't tell anyone. But as of today, there's no more Amazon Travel. I'm moving to a different division. We were just told a month ago and given a month to find other jobs. So that's it. And by the way, I have this conference ticket. Would you like to take it? So that's it. There's no negotiating. There's no like, oh, we'll keep it. We'll not feed it. That's it, yeah. Microsoft, our new CEO formerly worked at Microsoft, and he was talking about these parties where they would come by, have a glass of champagne, and kiss a product goodbye. So then another thing is this collaborative ecosystem. You have to tell me when I have 5 minutes left, and I'll speed through the rest, yeah? So the collaborative ecosystem, which I was talking about, if there are many startups that love their products, and then they go out of business. What do they do today with their code? Very often, they put it out on something called GitHub. So you can just go to GitHub, and there's all this open source code sitting around, waiting to be extended, provided you share your IP back with the community, the bulk of your IP back with the community. So there are all these platforms which actually are promoting, in a very digitized way, a global ecosystem of innovation. Yeah, I can give more examples, but I feel like I could go on forever. In our own industry, Lufthansa has an API that you can use. IBM Watson can help you do a lot of data analytics, on top of, by publishing these kind of open data access thing. Upwork promotes collaboration through connecting a network of freelancers. So if you, for example, need a video animation guy, there'll be someone sitting in the Philippines, and you can find him, you can find his rating. And have any of you used Upwork? Yeah, and it's more a human one, but it's, again, facilitated through a digital network. So those are some of the global technology-fueled, network enablers of global collaboration. There's also small things that traditional companies can do in a more traditional mindset. And here, traditional companies have a huge advantage because they already have a very strong community, whether it is of partners, of customers, of fans and users. I was watching this video from MIT Innovation Lab, where they incubate these startups. And one of the things they said is, can you go out and find prospective customers and talk to them? Just stop them in the street, talk to them, and find out what they're thinking. As traditional companies, many of our clients don't have the problem of trying to run out on the street and stop someone. They actually have a fan base, right? So here are 3 examples of traditional companies who are, in beer, in automobiles, and in Lego, which is toys. So what Heineken did was, it created this contest and said, we want to create the Heineken Club of the future. And they selected 19 designers from a global pool to design this club. So it's one kind of innovation, where somebody like Heineken puts that contest out there, the best designers from the world respond, right? Another is Audi, where you can go in as an Audi fan and pick and choose and play in an experience lab. And that's a form of getting that real-time customer feedback and designing your future product. And then Lego actually created a co-innovators network where the best Lego people are, they think Lego language. So they actually involve them and they give them a royalty if their idea is selected in terms of the Lego work. So there's a lot of power from this kind of co-creative thinking. You can get more real insights, you can innovate better, you can create a loyal community, you can create real customer-centric products, and you can have less risk because you're validating stuff as you go along. Another thing is hackathons. I already talked about this IATA NDC hackathon, which was such an eye-opener for me, less than 12 months ago. And then we've been obsessively attending hackathons, encouraging our young people, and they never disappoint. They ideate with such a fresh perspective. And in fact, we'll be hosting the next, here's some statistics on hackathons. It's really grown. And in fact, not only students, you might think that hackathons is something which is like really young people, students, but the bulk of them are professionals. They're sitting in some of the airline and airport organizations. They're sitting there with their creative potential relatively less tapped because we are not, somehow figuring out the mechanism of extracting these amazing value-adding individuals from the corporate hierarchy in which they sit. These are some that are happening in travel technology. And also some products like the Facebook like button and the Gmail application, they came out of hackathons. And this is the IATA NDC hackathon. What we love about NDC is that it's an open standard, and it again attempts to leverage this community, and it's part of this whole co-creation framework. So we are hosting that, as it's a little bit of a plug. That's just in 2 weeks from. So going back to the key enablers of innovation for large traditional environments, so you have to really you have to understand that innovation is important. I mean, we sort of theoretically get it, but we somehow, I'm sure, even now, I talk to people at Marriott, and they say, no, coping with Airbnb is not my biggest challenge. They actually say that, because they're like, I'm more focused on raising the standard of food, let's say, in some of these hotels, which have become more kind of stodgy or whatever. Fine. Those are extremely important part of your traveler experience, but where is the share shift going to happen? So it's again that conundrum of what do I make and sell, versus what do I sense and respond, and what do I anticipate and lead, yeah? So we have to make an effort, how do you have even at least pockets and processes that are bringing innovation into the fold of large enterprises. So now I'm transitioning. So those were sort of the first part of my presentation, which is the key enablers of how can traditional companies also innovate. And now we'll have a little innovation contest. I actually went to so the second part of the presentation, I've pulled together some case studies from different industries that are, where innovation is like thriving. And I want everyone here to think about how we can apply some of these ideas to the travel industry. So airlines are airports context, and if you tweet, there are some good prizes at the end of the conference, okay? So I'll give you some. If you want to tweet about some other innovative idea for our industry, that's great too. Here are some pointers for the types of technologies that other companies, other industries, and other just broad horizontals are thinking about. So have you heard of Amazon Go, the touchless store where you kind of walk in and walk out? I'll show you a video about it.
4 years ago, we started to wonder, what would shopping look like if you could walk into a store, grab what you want, and just go? What if we could weave the most advanced machine learning, computer vision, and AI into the very fabric of a store so you never have to wait in line? No lines, no checkouts, no registers. Welcome to Amazon Go. Use the Amazon Go app to enter. Then put away your phone and start shopping. It's really that simple. take whatever you like. Anything you pick up is automatically added to your virtual cart. If you change your mind about that cupcake, just put it back. Our technology will update your virtual cart automatically. So, how does it work? We used computer vision, deep learning algorithms, and sensor fusion, much like you'd find in self-driving cars. We call it Just Walk Out technology. Once you've got everything you want, you can just go. When you leave, our Just Walk Out technology adds up your virtual cart and charges your Amazon account. Your receipt is sent straight to the app, and you can keep going. Amazon Go. No lines, no checkout. No, seriously.
So actually, I live in Seattle from my Expedia days, and it was just open to the public last month. So I visited it this Monday for Ursula, and in fact, some of the awards for this innovation competition are from the Amazon Go store that are only sold there, exclusive in the store. Yeah, they're not expensive items, but we have one big grand prize, but the little things are exclusive. And we were very surprised because you can bring a friend, and you can take your phone, your smartphone, and you swipe it, right? And you can swipe in your friend too, and the two of you can separate. You go here, I go there, and we both shop, and it's all in the cart. So we were like, wow, I thought it was attached to my phone. And how are they knowing when I pick it up, put it back, pick it up again? How's that happening? And it turned out that you can go in and you can throw your phone away. Because at that point of time, it's all biometric. And we looked up after asking ourselves that question, and the whole ceiling is covered with cameras. Which was very scary, but they know everything. So that's one example. So how can we apply this for airports? Yeah. The others I'll just quickly scoot through because I don't want to take up too much time. In transportation sector, have you heard about Hyperloop, where you basically get in a capsule, and it's a vacuum tube between LA and Las Vegas, or San Francisco and LA. And it's a joint venture between Elon Musk and Branson has put in some money. And what you do is you put your car on this lift thing, boom, it goes down, and then you're shot out into this like tube with air bearings, and the enabling thing is it's not really car technology, but it's just transporting your car to LA. So Las Vegas to LA, which is, I think, about, I would say, 250 miles for sure. That's in 30 minutes. Yeah. So it's Mach 2, yeah. Anyway, Waymo, I saw this again. I went to Silicon Valley for a VC conference, and they were all, there was this guy, and he was showing how the trucker gets into the car, in auto, and gets into the car, and then the car is driving itself. And this is a live thing. They're showing it on the road. They had to get permission from the police and all of that. And they're driving, and the trucker gets up, walks off, reads a book, rests, So think of that digital asset versus physical asset. You're utilizing that physical asset, i.e. the truck, much better because it's able to drive longer and longer and longer because it's driving itself. And the driver is there as a guide, and is basically resting and can do much longer shifts or change, Financial services, the executives are really concerned because now if you look at the top 20 retail banks in the world, the 19th is actually a combination of all the non-traditional players, which is shocking because these are 100-plus-year-old institutions. The other. So blockchain, I think some of you are very good blockchain experts, so think about the applications of blockchain for airlines and airports world. Artificial intelligence, which is we are not utilizing enough of. Again, AI, machine learning, how do we use these ideas which are emerging? Again, this is people really think that AI is going to make a huge difference to our industry. How? Give us your ideas. The future of work. What parts of the work? Michael talked about, how we need that human touch. We need the relationship. So what parts of the work can be automated, and what parts of the work needs to have that relationship, human relationship and human touch element? So how can we think of not only the physical work. See, the physical work stuff happened. There was a whole revolution about it, because after the Industrial Revolution, there were all these people who thought that machines were making their physical work redundant, so they protested, the Luddites. But this is more about what kind of even non-physical, semi-manual or kind of automated work that, service work that can be performed, delegated to machines while we focus on more high-value generating activities. I know it's all, if you extrapolate, it's all a little bit scary. This is a Nike example. This is a Nike example where a conventional manufacturing takes 18 months because of all the processes involved in the design and manufacturing, and you can get much more proximity to your end consumer by leveraging 3D printing in your design. And shrink it to about 4 months. Have you all heard of 3D printing? I'm not sure if it's so applicable to airline and airport, but I'm sure if I asked those young kids, they would come up with some good ideas. So here's your challenge. So in general, innovation and digital way of thinking about things is changing everything. The way we produce stuff, the way we distribute stuff, the way we consume stuff, the way we transact, and the way we operate. So I will stop there. We actually, in general, IBS, our founder's vision is to turn an airline into a digital airline. And all the pieces of the business that are relevant to how airlines and airports operate, we want to help the airlines and airports, make a transition effectively and thrive and compete in the future. So that's the speech. I hope I didn't take too much. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Bratati. Please stay with us here.
Mm-hmm. We're looking for Michael Eggenschwiler. Please join us.
I will go a bit into the corner. And if you think about a lot of the digital changes that you have maybe noticed with Ryanair as part of their Always Getting Better campaign, the company behind a lot of those changes is Comtrade Digital Services, and I'm very happy to welcome to our panel as well the General Manager of Comtrade Digital Services, Marko Javornik. Marko, please join us here.
And I was telling you about my experience with Siri flying from Hamburg to Athens, and that was not connecting in Kuala Lumpur. It was even easier to get the CEO of Athens Airport to us, Yiannis Paraschis. He has flown non-stop from Athens to Hamburg yesterday.
Marko, can we start with you and jump a little bit into the airline world? From your experiences with airlines so far, what is the must-do for airlines in 2018?
Hello, everybody. Yeah, I would just relate to the great opening keynote. We live today in two different worlds. It's a world of physical assets, it's a world of digital assets. And I think airlines must realize this and must realize that if they will remain in the world of physical assets, they will have the destiny of a few, like last year you've seen Air Berlin, Alitalia, and so forth. There simply will not be enough value in the world of physical assets to survive. So if you want to be successful, you need to find your digital play. That doesn't mean that everybody needs to copy Ryanair and their Amazon for travel strategy, which I think is a good way. In fact, it's the opposite. I think you should not copy them. You should find your own strategy. But I firmly believe airlines that will not find their digital play, I think they will go bankrupt. There will not be enough value in a physical world for them to survive.
Yiannis, what about your airlines and your airport? Bratati said anticipate and lead. What are the topics you are working on to anticipate and lead in Athens, or as a wider European view in Europe?
Well, I would like to start by thanking Michael in the first place for this invitation. It's an honor and pleasure to be here. And I would like by saying this, we are a company which was created almost 20 years ago, and we have been, by definition, an innovator, in the sense that we were the first airport worldwide, but was created from scratch, meaning we were a greenfield, and we will remain the last greenfield before Berlin-Brandenburg or Istanbul Airport go into operation, but we are the last European greenfield. And on top of that, we were not just a new facility, we were also a company which was created from scratch. So we are an airport company which hasn't been created out of aviation experts, but from experts outside the industry or professionals outside the industry who have become aviation experts and were able to demonstrate that you can really disrupt in using today's world buzzwords and be successful by not coming from outside the industry. Now we are obviously have lost some of that talent over the years because this is an industry which is not a disruption industry. It is an industry which I think doesn't, fails to live with the three main attitudes that innovation requires, which is appetite for risk, tolerance to failure, and the willingness to separate from or sell whatever is being created. And I think this is definitely something that we need to reinvent and qualities that we need to create. Now, when you talk about the model of airlines and our relations in the future, I think we can only talk about a changing world requiring a customization of our services. We have been living in a world where one product fits all was good enough and was able for us to live and generate enough shareholder value. This is not going to be the case in the future. Having been loaded with multi-billions of assets, which are mostly brick and mortar, it's on the one hand a blessing, on the other hand a curse in this respect. So I think we need to reinvent ourselves, and I would fully agree that while being loaded with physical assets, which are still able to generate enough shareholder value, we need to find also as airports our role in the digital and non-physical environment. This being said, we started with great ambitions, and we have always considered technology to be one of our key differentiating assets. So we recognize technology and communication as one separate business unit in the company. Nevertheless, over the years, we have learned that it has become extremely expensive trying to be an innovator in an industry. So we have changed our role, and maybe we'll have the chance to talk about it. We want to be early adopters. We don't want to be innovators because we haven't been able to demonstrate in our relations with airlines, in our relations with our consumers, that we can, for the time being, create positive business cases in the short and medium term.
Thank you.
Bratati, IBS works across industries. Do you see, you mentioned a lot of innovations and different areas where a lot of things are happening. Do you see a common thread across industries for this year that people focus on?
I think in general, across hospitality and airline and travel management companies, tour operators, cruise lines, this is our customer segments. So it's all in travel, aviation, airports. Across all of these segments, the common thread is everyone thinks I am different. Somehow my business is, I don't know whether it's like I'm protected or my business needs are so unique that I cannot possibly, you have to like customize everything and for my unique needs. And I think that's something that's really common. And I think that is an inhibitor to the kind of open, collaborative, innovative thinking that we need to facilitate across this industry so that we are actually the originators of the new ideas because we are in the best position to do so, and not wait for someone else to come and disrupt. Yeah.
Michael, in your opening speech, you said that airlines tend to change rules quite often. It might not only be airlines, might also be security processes at airports. So is that something you want to work against in order to be part of changes? Will airlines listen to airports before they change? For example, with the 98 baggages you took from passengers at the boarding gate in front of the aircraft door, were you informed months before by Ryanair? Will they send a fax or CETA message, or will they just say, from tomorrow on we do it?
The latter, if we start with that case. So that was a fairly quick decision, and I think that's also part of the industry that, of course, airlines try to differentiate themselves, the way they operate, the way they run their businesses. And we, on the other side, we have the broadness of all these individual airlines with all their particularities. And for a place like us, where we go that broad, of course, it's a challenge of matching all of that. And I think there, if we speak about this kind of baggage issue, we would love to have one system where we can say, you go through security and that's the size I can take along, and then you go hassle-free onto your aircraft. But I mean, fact so far is that probably the number of airlines that you have, the number of baggage rules they have that are designed, and that can be very smooth or it can be the opposite. And I think that's probably one of the examples where an airport will be challenged to try and get certain things standardized, I think also in the interest of passengers, because they don't only travel always on the same airline. But again, the more you get standards, the less there is a separation or unique selling points for airlines, because then it becomes kind of the communist way of dressing, where there's no thinking in the morning of what am I going to wear today, because it's there. So I think that's one of the challenges, to be able to adapt to these kind of things. And I think that's one of our difficult roles in providing this platform, but in providing the individuality which an airline needs, and I think which we also want, because we need the competition. I think that's part of the industry. And there's many things where I believe we as an airport will have to learn to have this broad platform, to be kind of a facilitator. And bringing that together in a single platform which allows this individual freedom to differentiate. And I don't think there's a real solution to that yet. That's something where we're starting. And as Yiannis said, I think we're not in a position to be the leaders. I think we'll have to be smart followers, and that makes things quite difficult. So we've got to try and get the impact and to get the dialogue going, to develop solutions together. And I think that's one of the issues I personally see in the industry as being very, very difficult, because there's still quite a strong borderline between airlines and airports. And I think that's something we've been saying many times, even at this conference. If we don't manage to interlink the ways we work, we will not be moving as fast as we should. And I think the disadvantage you just mentioned.
Shall we open that question to the podium and to the audience, please? If there are questions, Ursula and I will look at you, and then we will listen at you. So we stick to the podium. Oh, first question, female question. That's something I really love. The microphone is coming.
So you mentioned a very good point about the scarce resource, which is access and user experience that takes technology to disruption. And I wonder about your example of Amazon Go. That what about user experience? You know, this is the downside that we may get with technology. What kind of experience we get if we go to a shop and we're surrounded by cameras and we feel that we're being watched for every single movement? How we can basically find a balance? You know, it's like bringing the technology, but you know, that's basically my question. That
yeah. So, you know, here's what I think. I think that many people who were walking into the store, were not really as concerned on the, you know, it's on the ceilings, yeah? Tomorrow, Amazon could just put a false ceiling and put little, you know, they could just have little for the camera part, yeah? For the lens part. So, ultimately, it's this challenge of convenience versus privacy, right? Which we are all struggling with as a global society. And it was very unnerving. Absolutely, it was unnerving. But everyone I watched in the store, I didn't see anyone stop and look up. They didn't. So they were not looking at it from a business angle. They were maybe assuming that it's with the phone. You know, they were not asking the question, how does it know? Is there a weight? You know, so they will sort it out. They will sort out the pieces that are, you know, the pieces that are convenience, the privacy sacrifice that you're making for convenience. They will come to one conclusion about it. Then the government and consumer advocacy groups might come from a different position. But those are just things in the medium term to sort out while still striving for a superior customer experience delivery. And you know, a privacy solution can be accommodated. You could say something like, that video, the moment it's accepted, the cart is accepted, and you know, the consumer accepts that purchase, it's deleted, whatever. You could come to some, it's a privacy issue being superimposed on a customer experience problem in this particular instance. So there are always roadblocks, you know, and you know, some customers might never walk in. It's like in our airports, the security, right? I used to always request a pat down because someone told me, oh, those waves, they're like, you know, something like X-rays. An individual makes a choice. And in airports, I would argue we make more of a choice in terms of our privacy to give up. And we do that by default. Versus in a retail environment, it's very new, so it feels very invasive.
Yiannis.
Yeah. Sorry.
Maybe to that point, I think it's a very complicated world. Yeah. On the one hand, you want to have more and more access to the consumer, his preferences, priorities, behaviors, and so forth. On the other hand, at least in Europe, there is a concern around this and the use of consumer data, and many of us have to struggle, particularly end of spring of this year. We have a new European regulation which comes into force about data protection, which makes things much more complicated. Yeah. So I think there is a field of conflict there. However, when we think about, you know, whether these are the millennials or new patterns of behavior in a global scale, I think we tend to underestimate the lack of concern when it comes to privacy with younger generations. I think we talk about privacy in a world where somebody would say, you know, I will never keep my diary, my private diary. If I experience something, I have to record it. If I have to record it, I have to upload it. And if I upload it, I have to share it. So where's the privacy there? So I think this is something where, you know, these concerns, obviously, they somehow fade. Nevertheless, you know, in the European context, this is definitely an issue, and this is something that in the coming years we will have to struggle with. We have embarked on a major project to see and redefine our role from a B2B business to a B2C business, or airport to C business. And those conflicts are very apparent and are really difficult to solve.
More questions? Let's go for a moment. Oh, sorry. Marian.
Yiannis, you mentioned how difficult it is to become or stay an innovator in terms of the business casing and how it pays back, and that you now become an early adopter. How in daily life, how important is innovation? How much, I guess that's especially a question towards the airport, how much can you actually be innovative? It's not part of your daily life. Your daily life is turn the aircraft around as quick as possible, avoid delays, and get the snow off the runway. How important is it, and how do you make sure that innovation still gets integrated into the company? Do you have special forms of cooperations, and where do you find your innovations?
Let me start by saying we have less of a problem removing snow. This is, but which becomes a nightmare when we have to. So, and we had this, with the climate change, we had this 3 or 4 times in the last decade. I think it is difficult. I said we are cursed by the fact that we are loaded with a brick and mortar asset base of of several billion of euros, which is able to generate by a rather traditional business model, if I may say so, enough shareholder returns. So you always have to see things in perspective. This being said, I fully agree that for the time being, it looks like aircraft would lead along strips of concrete to land on. We cannot park them on top of each other, so we need to expand in brick and mortar and in terms of traditional capacity. But I think innovation is a crucial element in our business, which is intrinsically linked with our license to grow. Growing and expanding is a very fundamental thing for airports, and this becomes much more difficult these days. So unless you become innovative and inventive in terms of how do you expand and how do you increase your capital asset base, which is something indeed very, very difficult because of the need to differentiate and customize, what you need to do. Not all airlines have the same understanding about capacity expansion. You are forced to sweat your assets, and you can do this only by reinventing the way you operate. By smart operations you can avoid. And obviously you need to recover those investments, and you have to demonstrate and be able to convince your clients that you have done the utmost before you move to brick and mortar expansion, and not only your customers, but also your stakeholders. And your stakeholders are the communities around, the people that are concerned in environmental sense, in noise sense, and the likes, when airports are about to expand. So I think it is an intrinsic element. Now, how can you get there? I think we have defined the world of what we call 5 C's. The one is, to start with, is collaboration. We cannot do it on our own. We need partnerships, internal and external, within the value chain and outside the value chain. And the question is really, how much can you chance of collaboration in innovation and digital disruption is there still when you have the 4 big boys plus 1, which the very well-known Google, Facebooks, Apples, and Amazons, plus Alibaba, who now account for jointly capital, sort of market capitalization, more than $3 trillion. And we are talking about enterprises like us, which are maybe a few billion worth, but are not global. We are linked to a certain location. This is a significant limitation. The second thing is, obviously, communication. You need to be digital. The third is customization. The fourth is cyber and cybersecurity, and the fifth is the consumer. I think we have to transform ourselves much more to consumer businesses fighting in those fields of conflicts, but the most essential element, I think, is to start with this collaboration. We cannot do it on our own. We need a network business model within the industry, but also observing the threats that are coming from outside the industry. And therefore, APIs, openness of data, and things like that are very, very crucial. I don't think our business model 20 years ago, our digital model was based on the idea of a captive market. We try to be a one-stop shop provider for all technology services, IT&T, to the whole community. We've been also a voice service provider and the likes, which was very innovative at that time. This doesn't work anymore. You cannot hold your clientele captive. It's an open society. You have to be competitive. You have to differentiate yourselves.
If I take up the technology discussion, and we benefit from having two technology providers here in our panel, I think both Yiannis mentioned now and Michael this morning during your welcome speech mentioned how airline and airline demands have a huge impact on the airport, and you have to be very flexible and react. And I think the baggage example was a very illustrative one. And then at the same time, we are saying, and Marko, you said very clearly, actually, the one target for this year for airlines is to digitalize. But why are they in such a mess and moving back and forth? I sometimes think they are the main technology behind of what airlines are still using. Sometimes I tend to compare, we are all driving fast on the German motorways, and we know we need to be very fast, and at the same time very flexible. We need to be able to turn and change direction fast. But at the same time, airlines still seem to go along in their horse carriages from 100 years ago, and they try to add some more horses to get faster, but they don't turn that well. What is the recommendation? It's how to approach this, and they seem to somehow maybe be a little bit lost, and so they try a little bit in the known and to imitate, as you said. Is it because they feel they are restricted because of their horses? Or so is it a vicious circle? What is the advice? How should they approach this?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think I fully share this perception that many airlines are lost. You know, they look at this digital world, they say, okay, yeah, we will be digital players. They try out some things, they run a few hackathons and so forth, and then things don't happen, and then they say, they want to go back and say, okay, this is not for us. We cannot compete with platforms and so forth. So there's a lot of confusion. I think this confusion comes from the different nature of innovation. So if I relate to the previous topic. So one thing is to incrementally innovate around your existing business model. So you say, okay, let's improve this by a factor of like 5% or so forth. We still remain with the same user experience. We still remain with the same business model, but we do some improvements. And these can be digital improvements, but they protect the current business model. It is completely different thing when you start with this transformative innovation. So basically when you are disrupting your own business model. If you look at the digital asset companies, these are different companies. These are no longer these single market companies. These are two-sided marketplace platform companies. They essentially work in a different way. And the path to there, it's not trivial. It's not like, okay, we buy this software package, we employ these 2 people and so forth. It is truly transformational journey for a company. So we work with Ryanair and really have a great relationship with CTO. We publish some articles together. He's saying in the future, Ryanair is a digital platform company that happens to have also a few hundred planes. So think about it, you know. So we are no longer an airline. We are a digital platform company, two-sided marketplace that happens to have as a unique advantage over some other marketplaces. We happen to have these physical assets that we, of course, monetize in a good way. I think this is the biggest issue. So we are used in companies, larger companies, we are used that, you know, we improve a little bit and the results are quick and so forth. But this is really, you need to go down to a valley and climb up into into rebirth of a new company, actually. And this is a longer journey than, let's say, financial officer, who wants to see the budget for next quarters. They don't see the value in this. But without this, the company, at least for airlines, I'm pretty sure they will not survive, because the value, again, the value of the physical assets will disappear.
Yes.
When you will see airline tickets for the price of €0, how do you compete with this if you don't have a digital agenda? I don't see any way.
Yes, and I absolutely agree with what you said, and I would add that you can look at your physical assets as a real asset too, and ultimately it's about who is my customer? Who is my customer, and how are these disruptive technologies enabling me to really help that customer? So as an example of the advantage of owning physical assets, if physical assets weren't important, why is Amazon investing in so much warehouse space? Why is Amazon investing in cargo hubs, in so many 767s? Why? Because they provide a unique competitive advantage. So as an example, these Priceline, the original model, which was an opaque bidding model, or Hotwire, these sites had this bidding model, which is now down to less than 10% of their business. But if I was an airline, I would look at my base, which routes, let's say in the shoulder season, Mallorca my planes are 60% full. Don't look at just, the yield on a gross level. You don't have to share everything with the intermediaries, but take advantage of the fact that you are vertically integrated to still be the digital retailer, but have access to data and leverage that data in your pricing if you bundle it with, say, hotel in Mallorca or car in Mallorca, whatever. So that's an example, just an example of how a physical asset is not zero value. The unfortunate problem is that if we don't move to the digital asset world strongly enough, we are commoditizing our physical assets rather than using them as an advantage. Yeah.
Marko, just one question. Sorry, Ursula, but I was thinking after you mentioned Ryanair as a digital platform, operating hundreds of planes. Why were they doing that so badly in the past months? Because if you want to be a fantastic digital platform and to get people liking you and paying for digital items, it should be the base to operate your 300, 400 aircraft in a proper way, and not to cancel as many flights and set off the passengers.
Yeah, so we work on the Amazon for Travel. This is internal operation. So yes, they had problems. The growth that they are experiencing has consequences. I cannot comment it for their side. For sure, the base operation, of course, needs to be solid. That's granted. You cannot have problems in this, and they were also on the stock market and so forth. Of course, they had issues because of that. But still, I think this is something that I'm absolutely sure they will resolve and recover. But the question is about the future. What is the future of the airline? I think that is the most important topic, and I believe Ryanair is one of a few airlines that has a vision for where they can sustain and compete against the digital companies. I think in this respect, they are the disruptor and the leader once again. So,
Michael, a lot of the activities which you described already this morning, which happen at Hamburg Airport at the moment in order to improve the customer experience, it's all about technology as well. Do you see, if I look at some developments where Manchester Airport Group have just started a whole technology arm, a separate business, Paris Airport Group were the only travel company at the Las Vegas Electronics Show. Could you imagine, do you see that there is this trend that basically everything you are doing is actually touching technology, and you will need to think about this?
Well, I think a lot of the development is in fact technology. And as Yiannis said before, I think we are forced more and more to develop our business on a scarce surface. If you take Hamburg, our services there is given. So everything we do will have to happen in this surface. And there's a pressure to grow within the surface. There's a pressure from your customers that you cannot just come and say, that's my new costs and here's the new bill. Thank you very much. I think those times are long gone. So in all these areas, we've basically got to find solutions of working smarter. And I think their technology comes in. And there, I think also our difficulty comes in that we don't have the size of the Paraschis or the very big airports, but that we've got to develop ways of being the smart followers. I mean, we will not be in a position to set trends and have a big team going in for innovations in that way. I mean, if I hear what kind of resources Ryanair or other airlines are putting into it, that's way beyond what we would ever be in a position to afford. So I think we've got to be fairly hands-on. I think what we're doing is also developing an as close as possible ear with the customers. I mean, what does the customer really want? And in the end, you find out it's not that much that he wants. He wants to get quickly, comfortably, punctually through his journey, and all other add-ons will be nice. And I think there it's about finding out what he wants in addition, but to getting these things really sorted out in a way that it's reliable and sustainable. And I think there we've got a lot of challenges in the industry because we're so interlinked. We as an airport, if something goes wrong, it's the airport's fault. If things go lovely, it was a great airline. So that's kind of the experience you get, and I think it's our job to basically get these links working, A, within our own companies, but also B, with all our partners. And I think that's the big challenge we have. And I think we've there got to make sure we don't exaggerate and get jumping on every horse we see, but to really say there's the added value, be it for our own processes, or be it for the customer value and the smoothness of his travel, or to ease the process with our partners. And I think there's enough challenge in that to get these kind of things going, because I think it was also mentioned, it also goes along with a different way of thinking. I think we're no longer the infrastructure provider, we're part of a system now, and that is not only getting the technology there and in place, it's also getting the people running and operating and living with the technology to basically go that way along. So I think it's a long way, but I think one we're working on, but which I think in some areas will not go as fast as you expect, just because you've got an organization which has to go along, and you've got technology which I think also develops in circles. You get a hype of issues, and then you get the frustration that the hype isn't that big, and then you kind of get the phase where you find the ground again, and then it picks up, and then it really works. So I think we're in the middle of that, and I think we've got to be cautious not to be too ambitious, but to be very, very short on the tracks, and to make sure we take the right trends, also take the cuts if something doesn't work. I fully agree. I mean, that's also a mentality you have to develop and say full stop and not try on and on and on, which I think comes into many organizations as a bit of a new approach.
Any more questions from the audience? Yes, that was really fast, and the microphone is also fast. It's coming from the back now.
Good morning, my name is Irini. I work with the GN Airlines. I think airlines need airports and airports need airlines. One hand. The other hand, I need to add, Michael, to your good notes that passengers need simplicity. And we need always and every day bear in our minds that if a travel is good, it needs simplicity. So in the procedures of an airline and in the airport, we need always think of that. Now, you said, Michael, that an airport must be a smart follower. I think that innovation comes when you understand what is the need of a passenger or a client next. And you have a wonderful opportunity during the procedure of the airport to see that. So I believe you cannot be only followers, but you can be innovators too. And if Athens International Airport is only in Greece, I believe that you have made wonderful work to be distinguished among other airports. So I believe that airports can also be innovators. And maybe airports can create an innovation lab. Because you see, at the end of the stage of a trip, before going up in the plane, what is the real need? And keep it simple. And I'm saying also to my company, keep it simple.
Efraistopoli. Gentlemen, yeah, please, the two airports. Are you simple enough? Or do you feel being simple?
Well, Yiannis is obviously simple enough if he gets some compliments. No, I fully agree with you. I mean, it's if I say smart follower, I mean that, of course, in respective to the very big developments. We will not be the ones leading the big technology movements which are there. I fully agree with you that we need to be very close to the passenger, to the customer. And I think that's an advantage we have, again, as a mid-size airport, that we're much more in a position to be really close. I mean, we have a small team which takes care of all, basically, customer input and feedback. And we do, in certain times, we do a kind of a passenger shadowing. So it's not cameras in the top of the building. It's physical people who would watch how passengers actually, once they enter the airport, what they do, where they go, how long they stay. We do interviews if we do something new. So rather than going in and saying we're going to have a research study with X thousand people, we have some of our young employees go into the airport and ask customers, how do you feel about it? Just to give you perhaps an example, but also to show how complex it sometimes is, in the baggage reclaiming area, the end of the journey where nobody likes to wait, we have introduced some weeks ago that we just put in some light music. Music is something which is smooth, which we started it, we said we'll do it as a test. The first thing we get back as a complaint is not from passengers, is from the customs officers who are annoyed by music during their work. Just to show you how many features we have, but I think also how we are trying to move things, and even if it's small things, to do those, and there we do try to be innovative. I think that's something which is the challenge we certainly have. And we also do it in a way that we're, of course, also talking very closely to airlines, the big ones with us, but any airline who wants to speak with us, to see where can we smoothen out the process. Because if you look at these issues, you will find out there's a lot of things where also airlines can be a lot smarter in the way they do it at an airport. And there I see there'll always be a mix with technology moving in. I don't see why you need three agents at the gate to board an aircraft. I think there'll be a time where we don't have an agent anymore, where you just walk through. These are the things coming, and I think there to find this balance between the smooth technology, which makes it easy and comfortable, but also to maintain a personal touch. And I think that's going to be one of the challenges we will be facing, to have the background done with technology and the upfront to be done with a smile.
Just one question: did you stop the music, or is the customs are the customs people now dancing?
We've put it back on, but we've got a lever in so we can reduce the noise around the customs offices.
Awesome.
It's very nice to hear, so good words from one's main client. So I think. This being said, I'd like to make a few comments on what has been said earlier, trying to make the discussion a bit more lively. I think around the question of physical assets and the issue of digital and online, I think everybody has been focusing in the past on the cost advantage, but I think it was Apple that demonstrated that if you are able to combine, the innovation, the ability to produce on a low-cost base, combined with real estate, physical assets, shops and branding, you can have a very different margin to what your competitors do. And I think that proves that in a world where everything becomes online, if you go, create Apple stores in the centers of the world, and you're able to demonstrate that how to combine real estate as a physical asset with the value of the brand. I think I read yesterday that I think Apple has iPhone is about 15% of the global market share of smartphones and has 70% of the profits that are being made. So that is the differentiation of a smart strategy of how you combine. Now, when it comes to Ryanair and this hype around, visionary statements, we're going to be a digital platform. This is the new expression of that is going to replace companies, which I think also in a regulatory world it is very difficult to deal with, because Facebook is not a media company. It's a platform, but at the same time disseminates a majority of messages, whether right or wrong, and somehow it needs to be regulated. You cannot hide behind the platform by not being regulated as a media company. But we're going to be a digital platform with some aircraft attached. I think some years ago we went through the same sort of visionary hype, calling airports malls with some runways attached as a vision for the industry. We didn't get there. And actually what we observe these days is that, and I think this is a great challenge, is that unless we are able to reinvent ourselves when it comes to to our non-aeronautical revenues, they are going down. So we are not the idea that we will be able to differentiate our model and be able to save and live based on consumerism is going down, because millennials, they tend to prefer experiences than possessions, and the online competition drives that section of our business down. And we have run a recent model which shows that unless we do a lot in this direction, we're going to lose 12, somewhere in the most optimistic scenario, 12% to 26% of our income on non-aeronautical by 2021. So we need to get there in order to protect our revenues, let alone being able to grow them. And so those visions tend to be corrected sometimes by reality. I think overall the idea of the hype and we tend to overestimate those disruptions and those changes in the short term, but obviously underestimate them in the long term as well. This is something that we need to bear in mind.
Marko and Bratati, please.
Yeah,
views
so
for the future.
just to comment this. So, I mean, of course, things go through hype cycles. So yes, there's a point where there's a delusional expectations of what certain concepts can materialize. But the digital world will come. So we work in transportation, not just in the air, also on the ground. And I had the, let's say, a privilege to learn from the ground mobility, And I heard car makers 3 years ago saying, Uber, Didi, BlaBlaCar, this is a hype, this will not change anything. We will still drive our own cars and so forth. Fast forward 3 years to today, so you have 800 million users of mobility services, and almost every single car company is establishing a new company for mobility services. They have recognized, unfortunately, you cannot stop the innovation. Once the wheel is invented, you cannot say to people, no, just keep on using the old business model, the old user experience. For airlines, for sure this will happen. So the user experience will go digital, and the one who will control the user experience, who will control the digital touch points, will be able to monetize this value. Now the question is, do airlines want to play in this game, or do they leave it to the others, so to the Google, to Skyscanner, to Siri maybe, and so forth. So I see myself 3 years from today, I will not be going through the agents and so forth. I will be talking to something like Siri, Alexa, get me a plane to Hamburg, reserve me a hotel and so forth. I see myself, truly, I believe this will happen. And now the one that will control this user experience will be able to monetize this quite well. So this is what I'm talking. And the difference comes when you start looking at technology not as a cost factor, but as something that can help you generate new revenue, maybe completely different revenue than the one that you have today.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah, and I think I don't think so much from a technology out perspective. I think from a customer in perspective, that's why I'm in marketing, I suppose. But, I mean, as a customer of an airline and an airport, there's so many things I would love to see. Like, I'm so pressed for time, right? So I don't want the airline to just say you're a business traveler today and you're a leisure traveler tomorrow. I want to say, oh, I love yoga, I love beaches, I would love to do yoga on beaches. So suggest to me 5 options for a holiday time when I can do yoga on a beach. I mean, it's... And I know friends who are golfers, say, for example, and they have the same... It's like you don't even have the time to say, take me to the Bahamas, to this particular yoga thing, and, I don't have the time. And why is my airline not telling me? They know so much about me. I'd happily give them that information. They already... anyway, the whole privacy issue is resolved for security reasons in the airline airport context, right? It's resolved by default. So, help me have a good time. So that's my challenge.
Lots of opportunities, and we have lots of questions. Can we please get the microphone?
Thank you. Hi, I'm Fred Finn, and I just wanted to make a comment to Marko about waiting for Alexa. You don't have to. You can use Quicket today, and you can tell it where you want to go. In 400th of a millisecond, it will answer you. You can then ask you which airplane you want to fly on. It'll show you a seat. It will have taken a body scan. It'll show you sitting in the seat when you walk on board in visual. And if the seat is too small, it will show you touching the seat in front of you. So Quicket is the answer to your question.
Does it also tell you where you can have yoga and the beach?
Absolutely.
Michael.
I think I'm just going to add another update on something that is already here for Bratati. If you go to hitlist.com, hitlist, you put things on your hit list, and they will then tell you when the fares and deals and offers all come up for the things that you're interested
Very
in.
good. Thank you.
And I'm Gillian Morris, who's one of the best entrepreneurs I've ever come across, who's behind that company, was speaking at one of our conferences, and British Airways were all over her like a rash after she's finished speaking. So maybe watch for it coming at British Airways, which is them doing it the other way around. British Airways saying, here's the fares, here's the deals, here's what we can do. And then you give the information to hitlist.com. So it's already here.
Great.
No, thanks for the supportive comments. Fully agree, actually. So, and digital world moves much faster. I think this is very important. And just to relate to one of the comments. So I hear many times from airlines, yeah, but we have the human touch and so forth. But the question is where human touch really matters, So when I want to get the plane and hotel and so forth, maybe I don't want the human touch. Maybe it's great that technology solves it in milliseconds, hyper-personalized, exactly for me, and based on a lot of data points that they collect from other travelers. And so the human touch, yes, it matters, but in some cases, technology will win, actually.
May I just ask one question quickly? Yes. If you go to the beach and play and then have yoga, the machine, will it give you a choice or not? Or will you just accept what the machine, basically you ask Alexa or Siri or whoever, and it says beach and yoga, and it will say, here's the price, here's where you fly, and that's where you're going? Or will you not want to say, I want a choice?
So I think that's the design of the retail platform that the airline partners with. So for example, when our company does similar things, which are on the customer interface, it's understanding that the psychographic profile of that customer and absolutely giving them options. I don't think that, I don't think that you have, look at Amazon, their personalization algorithms are so sophisticated now. We aren't even scratching the surface of that. And it's not about lack of choice. I think I would like to have 4 or 5 options, but if you're time pressed, you can choose between 4 or 5, So
the value of data and the possibility of data is amazing. So maybe you read the study around Facebook. So if Facebook has something like 10 likes, they know you as well as your colleague. If they basically have 100 likes from you, they know you like your friend. And if they have 300 likes from you, they know you like your spouse, So now imagine you have 300 data points or more, So you can suggest, basically, better than your wife or husband, basically. Who wouldn't like this kind of assistance, For example, I come to Hamburg. I think I'm 3rd time here. And let's say I stay over a weekend. I would love to hear, hey, people like you were delighted when they went here and here and here and here. I would be delighted. And I would open my wallet in a delightful way and pay for this kind of experience. I don't want to spend now 3 hours, what can I do in Hamburg, and so forth. I would like that somebody understands me and has a day. There were millions of people like me in Hamburg that voted with their wallet and basically their opinion, what they liked and what they didn't like. Why nobody gives this to me? And this will happen through the chatbots like Alexa and so forth. This will happen.
Maybe a comment from an airport's perspective. I think we all tend to concentrate on the consumer end when it comes to technology and innovation, and this is where everybody, the space becomes very, very, very tight for us. On the other hand, it was part of this year's Davos. It was really technology impact on the business itself, rather than and we have a big business-to-business component. And many parts of our business, like, for example, the aspect of digital towers. You don't need to have a tower anymore at the airport. You can run this remotely, and this is already being implemented. The whole aspect of what we call collaborative decision-making among the businesses in the airport in order to smoothen the process in the background rather than the consumer end are big aspects where airports have the chance to collaborate and to innovate where they have a competitive advantage as opposed to the consumer end. And we should not forget that airports, up to today, are the only element in the value chain of travel which still has an anonymous crowd management relationship with the consumer. All aspects of it, the travel agent, the OTA, the airline, even the ground handler, and tomorrow even the security, when we move to profiling, has a direct link to consumer data and the consumer profile. We still come from an end which has an anonymous link to the consumer. So we need to, in order to collaborate in such a value chain, you need not to be a subordinated member, you need to be able to be an emancipated partner. And that, I think, the first skill that we need to develop is around the data points of the consumer and the big data skills, which we lack. And this is, for example, in our case, a very specific project which we have embarked on, because we can talk a lot, but for the time being, airports still manage, their customers in a crowd management anonymous fashion.
So maybe you have touched upon activities which are a little bit the longer term. They are going beyond 2018, and I think we all agree it's around digital assets and probably the question who will own them. But can we continue with the other panel members just to conclude as our smoothie break gets closer? What you see as the medium and longer term beyond 2018 priorities? Bratati, do you want to start?
I think all these technologies, we have not really, we are just kind of scratching the bottom of the barrel. We're just starting out on this journey. So everything that we are seeing here, we keep talking about things like seamless traveler experience, happy traveler, take the dreamer from the dream to the end of the journey. Someone who's not even a gleam, the trip is a gleam in my eye. All these are banalities. Now I think the challenge is how in the next 10-year time frame we really make that a reality by leveraging what is already there actually in the world in terms of the analytical capability, the data, and the computation capability and the different technologies that are available to us. So, yeah.
So I think what will happen is, so today these two worlds are kind of divided, so you have the startups owning, let's say, the digital world and the, let's say, traditional companies owning the physical world. So as we go forward, we do live in both worlds at the same time. So I have my mobile phone here, I'm connected to the digital world, but the fact is I still move in the physical world. So these two worlds will combine, and this Amazon Go is a great example where a digital company says, okay, we need to go down, and on the other side, Walmart is going up, says we need to have a digital representative. So these worlds will merge. I think this will happen. the biggest difference when you go into this merge world is you no longer have this competition company to company, but like a digital ecosystem versus a digital-driven ecosystem on the other side. So, and the ones who will be able to create or embrace into more winning ecosystems, these are the companies that will win, you know. Apple Store is a winning ecosystem, but also the companies that embrace this ecosystem early are the winning companies, actually. And the same things will happen in the travel. So you will see ecosystems of players that will join hands together and that will start capturing this market in the seamless experience that we described there. And the ones that will be more flexible to join more these unpredictable winning basically ecosystems, I think those will be the winners.
Michael?
Well, I think on one side, what we will need to continue to do is develop the basics we're doing at the moment. Because, I mean, there's quite a few things which we're at, which are developing, and I think we should make sure we get those sorted out and right, especially at airports. I think there's quite a lot to do there. And the other issue is to me also finding a way of how can I follow up on all these developments, because I think it's very difficult to imagine what's going to come. You're in that world, you've kind of got your vision of what is all possible. And for us, it's kind of not being at that level, but being on the ground floor, so to speak, to say, what does it mean? Is that something which is going to go away in 6 months? Or is it something which is going to change so dramatically that I need to adjust? And I think that's one of the challenges companies also like we have, to say which are the issues I'm really moving with, I have to follow up on, I have to smart follow, and which are areas where I say, hold on, that may be something which is the wrong track. And I think that's one of the very big challenges we have, then also not to invest in the wrong direction. And that with the speed, which is phenomenal. I mean, the developments are so fast, and to keep track on that is for a company like ours, which is a smaller company, is quite difficult. And I think that's going to be one of our big challenges, to make sure we don't take the wrong track somewhere.
Thank you.
Yiannis, your prediction. Can be a simple one, you know?
Yeah, well, I think I've talked a lot, so I don't want to, I think it was very, something interesting that I heard very recently from somebody who I very much like to read about. He said, if somebody asks you what will be the world like in 2050, and he says it's going to be a world of science fiction, might not be true. If you ask somebody what will be the world in 2050, and he says it is not going to be a world of science fiction, he's definitely not true. So I think, we are moving into a world which will be very different to what it is today. For us, the biggest challenge, having started as a company of innovation, which is suffering from collective aging, because people don't like to work at airports, they don't leave. We have a very big challenge of how to reinvent ourselves, rejuvenate ourselves, get the thinkathons, and we do these things inside and outside the company. It remains the biggest challenge. I think in today's world, top talent is acquired not by airports, but by other people. And keeping and remaining competitive is a very big challenge. So the human factor, I think, for us is a big thing. We need to remain realistic. I think we embark on that journey by step by step. We need to develop an eponymous, as we call it in Greek, relationship with our customers as opposed to an anonymous one. We need to create the data points. We need to collaborate with our partners in the system. And we need to develop our capabilities together with our people. It's an interesting journey, but this being said, it is not the only thing that keeps an airport CEO awake at night. There's many other things which are equally, in some cases, even more important.
I think now we can give you a smoothie, isn't it?
Yes. We can start our smoothie break. Please join us again to continue our flight at 11:30. And just to make you aware, we've got a demo of Pass Me. Michael was talking about it earlier today. They are here during the break. Have a look also for the following breaks. So I won't repeat what Pass Me stands for, but you will find out if you look at it. Enjoy the break. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Breakfast in Spitalfields never felt so good.